All right. Listen, we're eventually going to get to James chapter 3. If you want to turn there, that's where we're going to eventually be. But right now, I just want to kind of chat with us and get us to that place and just see some things. So we've been looking at a series that we call Better You, Better Life, right? And so it's about a 20-week series that we found ourselves in. But we started by reminding ourselves that if we let our lives get better, and when I say that, and we've talked a lot about that phrase, letting your life get better. Nothing's keeping me from letting my life get better, right? You can't keep that from happening. The only thing that can keep me from being better, if I have Christ, it's just me getting in the way, right? And so a part of this is understanding that if the more I die to Him and the more I let Him reign in my life and let me get better in the things that He wants me to get better in, the better life I'm going to have and the better life you'll have if you know me, right? I mean, that really is a powerful thought when you think about it. You and I are all change agents, right? I mean, that's who we are. We're grace agents, and we can do that. And so we've talked about the 7 key areas of life, and I don't want to keep rehashing that. But when I let my faith get better, then my life gets better. The more I trust Christ, the more I lean on Him, the more I let His Word saturate my life, there's a better version of me there. And that's why it's important. All the Scripture is dealing that way. When I let my family get better, when I actually become the father and the husband and the son and the brother that God has called me to be, then my life is better, so is theirs, right? We do the same thing in friendships. If I let my friendships get better by me being more observant of others, to regard others as more important than myself, right? These are the things that we've been talking about. We've talked about all those areas. Talk about the field and the workplace and how I can make a difference in my workplace. It doesn't matter whether I'm a boss or an employee. It doesn't matter any of that. I can, if I'm better at what God has called me to be, then I can do that. I can be better in the area of my fitness, my mental health, and my spiritual health, or my emotional health, and as well as just my physical health. Same thing in the area of my finances, right? I'm a steward of the resources that God has entrusted to me. And the better I use that stuff, the better my life is going to be. So these are the things we've talked about. We talked about a Sabbath rest. And the more I realize that I don't have to be hustling 24/7 like the whole world wants me to. It's okay to check out, take a break. Now, not too long, check out, take a break, but right. But we can take that break, and it's important that we do because I'm locking the rest of the world out, and it's just going to be here, right? And how powerful that is. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with that church in Ukraine. They're locking everything else out. When they gather in that place, the whole world may be falling apart, but right there, they're focused on that Sabbath kind of a thing. And what if we lived life that way? How much better would it be? We've realized that there are certain obstacles that keep us from getting to the life that we ought to be and we want to be at. And so we've seen those. We look at the last one today. So that's good news for us if we're tired of the obstacles. Next week, we're going to look at what we would call enhancers or accelerators, those things that if we allow in our life, like if we become grace or we become grateful, how that propels us really forward in a faster way. So you've got certain things that are holding us back, and that's what we're looking at. We're going to finish up today, and it's these things called obstacles, right? We talked about fear and how that can hold us back and how God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. We talked about guilt and shame and how we can allow our own mistakes and sin to begin to own us so that we lose sight of who God wants us to be, and we live in a thing called shame. We realize that anger left unchecked moves towards sin, and it's a deadly anger. I mean, it destroys everything in its path. And we talked about what it means to be slothful or lazy and to lack focus, just to put ourselves on autopilot. You can never really put yourself on autopilot, right? I mean, if we buy into the concept in Romans that says, "Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed," it's a passive thing that happens. The world transforms us not because we actively choose to, it's because we became passive. We allowed the world to do something to us. If you picture yourself swimming or canoeing upstream, you can never just put your paddle up and go, "I'm just going to rest here for a minute," because you won't be there very long at all. The water's going to take you exactly where it wants to go. And so if you're not always paddling upstream in this life, you're going to end up looking a lot like the world. And that's what happens when we get lazy and we lose focus. Then we end up looking just like the world. That's why we gather on Sundays, to encourage each other, to remind each other. It's like Samuel was talking about. I'm going to do what God's called me to be, right? And so we hear that rally cry, and so we try to be better this week in that area. And these are the things that matter. Today we look at this the sin of envy. Now, it's a crazy sin. The more I thought about this, the more I'm like, man, it's insane. There's a saying in the scriptures, right? Sin is fun for a season, right? And so, if we're honest, there's a little anger can be a little fun for a minute, right? I mean, it's good to let it go, right? I mean, you may not. Maybe I'm just speaking to myself, and that's okay. Y'all can just act like, But, and that there's so many of those sins that selfishness, man. I mean, sometimes I like to get my selfish on, right? And it's fun for a minute, and gossip. I feel better sometimes after I've made myself feel good by talking bad about something. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if we're just honest, right? But envy is one of those things. There's never any pleasure in that. I'm miserable. People who are envious, there's no joy in envy. There's only misery in wishing that you had somebody else's life. And so I think it's important, because I do think that this is what keeps a lot of us from living the life that God would have us to live. And I'm going to give you a lot of working definitions before we get to the cure and all of that in a minute. But let me give you a definition of what envy is. It is a desire for something that someone else has, and a feeling of resentment over their advantage. That's what that is. So I'm living life, and my life would be good if I didn't have to live it with other people, because I'm all right. And then look around and I see, well, they look like they're a little ahead of me. Or they look like they got a little more than I do. They're a little better looking than I am, right? And all of a sudden, what happens is I'm like, okay, well, I've got to catch up. So I'm either going to go start sabotaging their lives to bring them down, or I'm going to find a way to cheat to get ahead. And that's why this is such a destructive thing, because no longer now am I living my best life, so to speak. I'm trying to make sure everybody else doesn't live theirs. You think, how evil and ugly is that? Now, sometimes it can be confusing what envy and jealousy is, and so and they seem similar, but they are different. Jealousy is concerned with losing what I have, right? Envy is the fear or being concerned about what I don't have, right? So that's what's going on. So I'm jealous. Listen, if some guy starts coming and looking at my hot wife, that's jealousy. What it feels when I'm like, hey, whoa, what? I don't know why I'm saying this, but I remember Tammy, when she was doing weddings, she came home one night, she said, yeah, some guy made me dance with him. I'm like, and all of a sudden I could feel in me, I could feel something. I mean, it's a kid, it didn't mean anything. He was just trying to, get the wedding coordinator to have a little fun. And I'm like, he did what? And you did what? And all of a sudden you can feel, what that feels like? I'm losing something, right? I mean, somebody's trying to horn in on my territory, right? That's jealousy. And so it's important that we understand the difference. We're not talking about jealousy today. We're talking about envy. Envy is concerned with what I don't have, and I want to prevent others from having it too, right? So that's where we're going. It's against anything that might be considered a blessing if that blessing isn't being received by me, right? So I don't want you to be blessed. I don't mind you being blessed as long as my blessing is a little bigger than your blessing. But I don't want to see you get an advantage. Now, I know we can all act like we don't have that sin, but you should realize we all struggle with this, right? I mean, you're feeling pretty good about yourself till you see somebody comes in there in better shape than you, right? Maybe you don't. Maybe you could see. Here's what we do: we compete in the area that we like. So if I know I can't compete in that, then I just pretend I don't care about that. But we care about it. We care about it. Like singing. I mean, I can't sing, so I'm not. You sing better than me. I'm like, hey, good for you. But now, when it comes to speaking, if I think, oh, damn, they were a little better than I am, or all of a sudden I hear people talking about them all the time, I'm like, hey, I'm over here, right? Does that ever happen to you? Pick your territory, and you realize All of a sudden, there's this competition you didn't even know you were in. And the people that you're competing against don't even know you're in it. But we know we're in it. Envy, envy wants others to feel as unsuccessful as I do. Just let that. I'm gonna say it again. Envy is wanting others to feel as unsuccessful as I feel. Right. So I want you to be as unsuccessful as I feel in my area. We become obsessed with leveling the playing field. Right. Are you there? Am I speaking to anybody today in that area? Right. Either by me moving up or pushing you down. That's what happens. Right. And so we say things like, "Oh yeah, they got a big church, but." Right? They're in the right area, or they got the right kind of money, or they got whatever. Oh, sure, they're president of that company, but it's a terrible company. I wouldn't want to work there. Right? We start kind of thinking whatever we can think in order to get where we want to go. Envy works in areas where we choose to compete. So that it's just crazy stuff. So here's what I want to do. What does the Bible say about it? What does this Bible that we hold in our hands say to us about this issue? And we're in James chapter 3, verse 16. And we got about 4 or 5 of these things we're going to look at today. And so we're going to start in James chapter 3. Listen to what he says. Am I in 3? Yeah. Let's start in verse 13. Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior and his deeds done in gentleness. Hang on, I lost my Bible. And selfish ambition in your heart. Do not be arrogant, so lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, natural, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition, that's envy, that selfish ambition. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there is disorder and every evil thing. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peace-loving, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial, free of hypocrisy, and the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. What does he say? Man, envy never sins alone. It always brings its friends with it. Every one of them does that. And he lists that out for me and tells me what it is. It's selfish ambition. It's disorder. It's a chaos. People who are envious create chaos wherever they go and in everything they do. And they begin to feel bitter about other people. They begin to gossip about other people. They begin to be ungrateful about things. And anxiety and stress begins to creep in. This is what happens when envy gets a hold of us. Now, let me just get you to think for a minute. What is it that you're envious about? What's your category? I don't say it out loud, but what's your category there where you tend to wish you were living someone else's life, so to speak, that you feel inferior because that life is where it is. Here's what we have to do. See our sin, right? We have to at least see our sin, bring it into the light of God's word, and then walk in the freedom that God's given to us by finding victory over it. That's how every sin is knocked down. And so it's important that we see that. And so the second thing is, not only does envy never sin alone, it's just going to bring a bunch of chaos and garbage into your life. Comparison always destroys. This is the problem with envy. It's comparison. We're like, okay, well, is life fair? Does everybody have what, we think life is fair. And the reality is life isn't fair. Look at what John 21:20. Let me read it to you. Truly I say to you, when you were younger, I'm going to start in verse 18 to get a running start. Truly I say to you, when you were younger, you used to put on your belt and walk wherever you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hand and someone else will put your belt on you and bring you where you don't want to go. Now he said this, indicating what kind of death that he would take. Am I in the right? Yeah, John 21:20. Let me get to 20. Peter turned around and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them, and the one who was leaning back on his chest at the supper. And he's like, well, Lord, what's going on here? You remember a similar passage to this when they're walking on the beach at the end of the deal, and Jesus has come back, and so he meets Peter on the beach, and he says, Peter, let's take a walk. Do you remember that? And so they're walking, and Jesus looks at Peter and goes, Peter, do you love me? Oh, yeah, Lord, I love you. This is his first encounter with Jesus, really, in a significant way, after he had betrayed him. And so he's walked along the beach, and the Lord asked him a second time, well, Peter, do you love me? Yeah, Lord. Yes, Lord, I love you. And so he asked him a third time. And he says, Peter, do you really like me? That's he dropped love down to a different level. And Peter goes, Lord, you know all things. Yes, why are you beating me over the head with this? And he says, I want you to feed my sheep. Now, you would think that's a pretty prominent thing, right? If the Lord calls you for a private little walk and he says, hey, I got a job for you. Do you love me? Yes, you love me. Okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take care of the church. I want you to, I'm passing this torch to you. And Peter's remark is, what about him, right? Because John's kind of tagging along in the back. And the way John writes, he calls him, which is kind of interesting, that might be a little pride going on there, but he says the disciple whom Jesus loved. That's how John, when he writes, refers him to himself, right? But what's going on there? Peter can't enjoy the place God has for him because he keeps worrying about John. That's when the Lord looks at him and says, hey man, if I want him to be alive until I come back again, what's that to you? Right? And so there's that resentment. It steals joy. What was it that drove Cain to want to kill Abel? It was that concept of Abel got approved and I didn't feel like I did. So what's he going to do? He's going to go kill. He's going to do what he does and destroy. And so I want us to understand this envy as we relate it to living our best life. But so the first thing is that envy never sins alone. Listen, understand, when you start comparing yourself to somebody else, you're going to drag a lot of sin into that. And anytime we drag a bunch of garbage into our life, we can't live our best life. The second thing is comparison destroys everything. It keeps me from enjoying the place that God has for me, right? And so it's important that we understand that. The third thing is it's obsessed with making others unsuccessful. Remember 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 7? David and Saul, and they're singing this song. David has... Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s, right? You remember that? And that how ugly and how angry that Saul got because of that. It's just like, hey, I didn't mind David killing Goliath. I don't mind that. But all of a sudden now he's getting all the praise and I'm not. He's obsessed with making someone else as unsuccessful as he feels. I don't know why I had this thought this morning, but man, I was probably 12 years old. We used to play baseball. I love baseball. I played first base and loved it. I was tall, left-handed, and I could play the game. And so we'd practice at East Lake Park. I don't know if you remember East Lake Park or whatever, but we would always practice over there at East Lake Park. And so where first base was and home was, if a guy threw a ball, and it wasn't in an area where I could catch it, sometimes it would roll all the way into the lake. And so on one particular day it did that. And I don't know if you remember East Lake Park back in the day when I was there, but it didn't have the nice little barrier around it. They had these little concrete things to keep the bank from eroding into the water. And I had metal cleats on, and so I went to just kind of grab that ball, and the next thing I knew, my feet slipped, and I am in the water. And it's gross and murky. I don't know if you've ever been in East Lake Park, but when you come up, you look like this green monster because this slime is everywhere. And I've got it all over me, and I'm mortified because I am a great ball player. And I am like, I don't belong in that water. My whole team's laughing at me, and it was one of those most embarrassing things. My good friend Greg Tucker, one of the sweetest guys around, comes over, and he's going to help me get out of the water. I am so angry at everything going on. I plant my foot on that piece of concrete, and when he grabs my hand, I just jerk him right into the water with me, And of course, he came up like, "What are you doing?" Then we started laughing and everything. But I don't know. This morning I was thinking that's the perfect picture of what envy is. It's like I'm in this misery and he's not, and he could have been anybody. Any one of the ball players could have come over and help me out, and I was going to pull them in because I don't want to be the only one embarrassed and humiliated by what's happening in the middle of that thing going on. And I think that's my life. When you let envy in your world, that's what you do. All you care about is planting your foot and jerking somebody down to the level that you are, so that misery loves company. And I think, man, that's just crazy. But we do that all the time, don't we? Somebody pre-union to come in, you go, I bet they paid for that. But that's plastic surgery, right? They can't look that young. The older you get and you start looking at your peers and you realize, man, how come I look a lot older than they do? At this funeral, somebody said, y'all hadn't changed a bit. I'm like, man, I am a bald-headed man with gray, and you want to lie to me like that? But it's just interesting, though, how we do that, right? And we just find a weakness in everything, right? So I'm gonna drag you down. If I'm so concerned with where you are in your station of dragging you down, I can never live the life that God wants me to live. Envy, again, never allows for contentment. See if I can find my Bible. Suddenly went away. Online, anyway. Let me find it. Yep. Thank you. Yep. Proverbs 14:30. This is a great proverb. I know, they're all stuck. 14:30. A heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. Just let that thing sink in for a minute, right? Patience is gone. Trusting God isn't happening. That's what happens. When you and I get envy, we're not patient at all. We want what we want right now. And it just rots the bone. And I'm not trusting the Lord anymore. I'm comparing, and all of a sudden I'm not going to be content with where He has me. I'm going to be wrestling, and I'm going to be doing some crazy stuff. It is what it is. Envy does that. It just allows no contentment because you seem to have the advantage. Wouldn't it be amazing if there was no such thing as competition in our life? I mean, literally, if it wasn't like we were trying to compete against. We're not trying to compete against each other, but we think we are, don't we? Right? I've got to be a little sharper than you. I got to be a little smarter, a little better looking, a little further advanced and whatever. And it's a terrible thing, and it just robs us of gratefulness. So what's the cure for all this? Well, I got several things. One is quit looking over the fence, right? The whole grass is greener thing. If you and me could just stay in our lane and realize, okay, God's blessing me right where I am, right? That's the crucial thing to do. I got 4 things for it. Number one is own up to it, right? Just own up to it. Don't try to justify it. Don't rationalize it or rename it. Own up to the fact and go, you know what? I think I'm a little envious of what's going on right there. We need to call our sin out. That's the first thing. See it. Just see it for what it is, because it will keep you from living your best life. The second thing is acknowledge that your issue is God, not somebody else, right? If you're mad at them, that's not their fault. They can't give you their great voice, right? They can't give you their look. They can't give you anything that you think you want. They got what they got. You got what you got. God, if you got an issue, it's with the Lord. And I think it's important for us to go, all right, Lord, having to wrestle with that reminds me of the stewards who were promised to get paid a denarii for their day's wage and their day of work. And so they're pretty happy about that. And then they're getting in line. He's hired people all through the day. When they get in line, the guys that started working last get up there and they say, hey, man, they just gave him a denarii. No telling what he's going to give me. And when I get up there, he gives me the same thing he gave that guy that only worked an hour. Like, what happened? I've been here for 10 hours, and all of a sudden this guy got that. And that upset. Listen, weren't you excited about the denarii when he told you he was going to pay you for that? Weren't you excited about that? So it's the same thing about life. Listen, I can't worry about what's going on in somebody else's life. It's my life. I'm going to be content in the area that God has for me. The third thing is that we ought to give those who are better than us, just give them a break. Now, why don't we just go, hey, it's cool. It's cool. Good for you. Good for you, right? Man, I don't know what's going on, but all my friends are starting to get convertibles. And I've been wanting one and looking around. And Debbie comes in with her little Mercedes last week. And I'm like, man, That sounds nice. Wish I had that. Went to a little retirement party with my brother-in-law this week, and he go, "Oh yeah, I got me a new Mercedes." I mean, it's an old one. It's like a '97, but it's a convertible and it's gorgeous. I'm like, okay. I'm trying not to come home and start, where can I find one, But there's something in you that wants to do that instead of going, "Hey man, good for you."
Celebrate.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
And I think we have to do that. We have to go, "Hey, good for you." Right? I'll get mine when the Lord lets me have mine, if He does. But it's just important that we develop that mindset because now there's no competition, right? Oh, if I don't, that's what happens. And then the fourth thing is I ought to celebrate what I do have. Shouldn't we? Let's just celebrate what we do have, right? Hey, my old body may not look like it used to, but it's still kicking. I'm gonna celebrate that, right? I'm gonna celebrate, the fact that at the end of our paying our bills, we still have a little cash. Maybe I don't have as much cash in the end everybody else does, but you know what? I'm all right. And to me, this is the way that we ought to live our life. One final thought, really, two thoughts. I think there's two things that have to be at the forefront of all of our mind. If we're going to live our best life in that sense of a better me, I can't be better if I'm comparing myself to everybody else. But if I realize two things, life's not fair, I should start there. Life's not fair. God never said it was going to be fair. He never told Cain and Abel life was going to be fair. He never told any of them that life was going to be fair. Life is not fair. God will do what He wants to with this one, and He may do something different with that one. And it's exactly what God desires that would happen. And it's all for our good. So I should quit that game and realize life's not fair and I'm not going to play that. And the second thing is, but life is good. When you can start saying that, when you can say, "Hey man, life's not fair, but my life is good," it's a game changer in how you live your life. That's what I want to share with you guys today. And man, Lord bless you. Glad you came. I got a song we're going to leave out on, and it's a good one. It's a good one.